Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello, and we're back again with episode 2 of Rabbits, titled Concernicus Jones. If you haven't seen the videos for part 1, for the first episode, not part 1, the first episode, I'm gonna try and link, if I can figure out how to do it, a card to the playlist. You can go back and start at the beginning. If not, I will try to put links to the first videos in the description. So, without further ado, let's get on our way.
If you enjoy rabbits, you'll love our other podcast, Tanis. Tanis is a docudrama about an ancient and mysterious myth, perhaps the last genuine mystery of the information age.
We'll go ahead and skip this part.
.com/Tanis or Tanis Podcast.
What do you know about chaos theory?
The streets were red, then black with blood.
That sounds poetic. Where are you now?
I love the intro for this podcast.
It's inspiration.
Are we still gonna have sex?
I'm afraid not.
She believed Hazel killed Emily Masters.
Maybe later.
For sure, later.
If I remember correctly, we'll get a short recap of episode 1, then we'll build into episode 2. Have no idea why I feel it necessary to lean into my mic when I talk.
I first heard about the game shortly after my best friend, Yumiko Takada, disappeared. I started this podcast because I want to find out what happened to my friend. From the Public Radio Alliance and Minnow Beats Whale, you're listening to Rabbits. I'm Carly Parker. Stay with us.
Great music too. There's just something about it that's foreboding.
So, I took the photo of Yumiko to the police, convinced I finally had something they would respond to. She'd gotten that tattoo about a month before she disappeared. The police looked into it, but the problem was, Yumiko never told her parents or her brother about the tattoo. The artist who did it was unreachable. Apparently, he'd moved to Thailand to live off the grid. The police asked me if I had any evidence that Yumiko had been working as a prostitute. I told them she wasn't a prostitute, but that she must have been masquerading as one for some reason. I could tell they were getting tired of me. Extremely tired. I needed to try something else.
Hello?
Hi, are you the person who sent me that picture of Yumiko?
Yes.
Concernicus Jones?
It doesn't sound quite as cool hearing it said out loud.
How did you get that application on my computer?
That's your question?
Answer it. Please?
I'm trying to help.
Okay, help me understand how you broke into my computer. Are you a hacker?
No. but I have a few friends in the business.
What do you want?
Like I said, I want to help.
What do I call you? Concernicus?
That's not great.
How about I call you CJ?
How about Jones?
That works.
And the thing is I like how you hear it in her voice that she doesn't just immediately trust him. She's just kind of, we'll figure it out and build up to actual trust. But you can hear the wariness in her voice, the not really trusting.
So that was Jones. I'll get back to him in a bit. But right now, I'm going to do my best to fill in some more of the background. Try and bring you up to speed on where I'm at with my investigation so far. I told the police about Byron Price, the writer of that real-life treasure hunting book, The Secret, and how I found him connected to Yumiko. They wrote it down, but I could tell that the detective I spoke with, the same woman I talked to about the tattoo, had no interest in that connection either. In fact, she told me that they'd already looked into all of that stuff, and reminded me I needed to be careful not to interfere with their investigation. I explained that I was just trying to help. She told me, as nicely as she could, that I would just be getting in the way. I could tell she believed two things. One, that I was probably nuts. And two, that Yumiko had taken off of her own volition. The police weren't going to be any help.
And that's kind of a common thread in a lot of the other podcasts they do. Is basically your protagonist is kind of in a situation where they've got to be their own Sherlock Holmes, their own, Scotland Yard or police or whatever, and do all the legwork.
I was on my own. In 2015, a boy died from playing a video game for 22 days straight. He followed all the rules, ate, slept, took all the requisite breaks, but by sitting still for so long, he'd become susceptible to blood clotting. The same year, 2 Taiwanese men died in a very similar way. The first was a 38-year-old man who was found dead after playing video games for 5 days straight in an internet cafe in Taipei. The second was a 32-year-old man who died from cardiac arrest after playing a computer game for 3 days without stopping. In 2009, in Korea, a young couple got so wrapped up in an online game that they failed to feed their child.
And that is actual true story, because I remember when it happened, and I went back after I listened to this podcast and looked the story up, and that the whole thing about the couple playing video games and forgetting about their child, that's actually based in a real world story.
Eventually, starved to death. How could such a horrific and unimaginable tragedy happen in today's world? I got all of this stuff from Yumiko. She'd recently become obsessed with the subject of death by video game, for lack of a better term. She was deep into researching this subject for her book when she disappeared.
And the trail that Carly's getting ready to go on is really pretty cool, piecing things together type thing.
People died in the 1980s playing video games. The most commonly cited examples are attributed to a game called, perhaps fittingly, Berserk. Interestingly, the most infamous deadly video game of them all, the vector-raster graphics combo game called Polybius, might not have even existed. But if it did exist, Polybius was, allegedly, responsible for some extreme craziness up here in the Pacific Northwest.
That is actually one of those really cool things. I haven't taken the time yet to actually see if there's a real world parallel to this, but it's just one of those things that they've adapted so many real world things and made a story appropriate for it. It's just really cool.
Clearly, video game weirdness has been happening for a long time, but actually dying from playing a game, thankfully, remains rare. But virtual and augmented reality are here, and advances are going to be exponential. These types of gaming fatalities are probably, sadly, only going to increase. Are people going to abandon real life for the virtual world?
And that is the question that has plagued people for probably the last 35 years.
Are people going to step out into traffic chasing virtual creatures? Imagine what's going to be possible. Imagine all the dark, crazy stuff out there now. What happens if people get strung out and can't tell the difference between what's happening in front of them in their VR glasses or in real life? There are incredible therapeutic benefits coming with virtual reality, but there are also some extremely dangerous implications when it comes to addiction.
And that, I think we're going to be starting to face probably soon, the whole VR addiction with the goggles and stuff they have now. I think probably within a generation that's going to be an issue. But I like the fact they're addressing it now. They're putting it out. They're getting that out, and so people might be aware what's going on. That's just cool, incorporating real world fears into a good story and doing it the right way.
Along with all of her research into the strange deaths surrounding video games for her book, Yumiko had been researching an article on online video game addiction. Like I said, she was obsessed. I was really into video games as a kid, but my older brother, Eric, older by 19 years, was possessed. He almost lost his thumb from playing too much in television, auto racing and Space Spartans in particular. Space Spartans was a clone of the wildly popular Atari game called Star Raiders. In television, by Mattel, had these strange-looking disc controllers that, to my knowledge, nobody's used before or since. They were fairly awkward, nowhere near as user-friendly as the joystick that came with the far more successful Atari 2600, released a year earlier. Those. Eric's thumb became so infected from constantly rubbing his nail into his cuticle that my parents had to give his Intellivision console away. It was good news for Eric. This meant our family finally got an Atari. I can't stress enough how addicted my brother was to playing video games, and I mean capital A addicted. As a teenager, he actually took a trip to the famous arcade, Fun Spot, to play Centipede against infamous American video game champion Billy Mitchell. My brother didn't win, not even close. He came home, somehow convinced my parents to buy him a stand-up Centipede machine, and started practicing every day. That machine is still in my parents' basement, Yumiko and I played it constantly when we were kids.
See, this is what I think is cool, is the characters are tech-savvy characters. Written by tech-savvy people. So they get that integration in there, they get it going, and some of the stuff is kind of like real niche. Some of it is just kind of like common computer knowledge and stuff. And I would say a lot of the characters in these are probably early millennials, late Gen Xers that have grown up. After reading the book, I am really convinced that Terry Miles is probably a Gen Xer. Maybe an early millennial, but I doubt it. But that's just based on his writing. And it's real hard to find information other than his resume online. So I haven't really looked super hard to find out, age and all that comparison. So until we go, let's get back into it.
By the time I was born, in 1989, Eric had amassed an enormous collection of computers, disk drives, and consoles. I grew up surrounded by this kind of stuff. I looked up to my brother, and it wasn't long before I began to share his obsession with video games and video game culture. An obsession that only increased after he died.
See, the whole video game culture thing, that is, I like that authors and stuff are now giving that its own little, it's subculture is what it is. It's cool that there's that acknowledgement now. For like when I was in my teens and stuff playing video games or pinball and stuff like that, we were just kind of there, and now it's grown into its own little subculture. And I think that's kind of cool, and the way they incorporate it into the story.
After he committed suicide. He never did make it back to Fun Spot for a rematch with Billy Mitchell. My brother always made me laugh. We played video games constantly. I loved spending time with him. I miss him. My brother lived in our parents' basement his entire life. After his death, I inherited Eric's bedroom and all the ancient crazy computer and game console stuff that came with it. I'm not sure how to describe my brother's room. It looked similar to the lone gunman's operation in the X-Files, or something out of Battlestar Galactica.
Yes. Current relevant culture, pop culture references that are iconic enough to be that 5, 10, 15 years from now, people will still get them.
Every square inch of space was covered in computing or gaming equipment. Where other people would have DVDs, books, or CDs, he had racks of game cartridges from Activision to Atari and ColecoVision to Sega Genesis. He had them all. His floppy disk and data cassette tape collections were even bigger. If you needed an already way out-of-date 14.4 dial-up modem in 1999, I had 7 of them.
And I think this is a good point to go ahead and call this video good. Hope you're enjoying the videos. And if you want to, subscribe and thumbs up, give it a like, and do the whole bell thing. And if you don't. I mean, like I've said in previous videos, I do this to share my enjoyment of whatever I'm into at the moment. So until the next video, peace.